14 Psalm 68. 14 refers to snow in Zaman, which is part of Mount Hor and Jebel Idrus, located of the Jordan. Jehovah, the producer of snow, can also control it. Job 37. 6. PS 147. 16 To serve his purpose, God has stored snow and hail for the day of fight and war. Job 38. 22, 23. Illustrative use. Snow is used in scriptural similes to help convey the idea of whiteness. X4. 6. New 12. 10. 2 Chi 5. 27. Dar 7. 9. Mount 28. 3. Re 1. 14 Sometimes it is associated with purity. Issa 1. 18. Bar 4. 7 For example, David begged God to purify him from sin, washing him so that he might become whiter even than snow. PS 51. 7. Job's 3 companions, being no source of true comfort to him, were likened to a winter torrent, swollen by melting ice and snow in the mountains, but running dry in the heat of summer. Job 6. 15-17 Sheol is said to snatch away sinners as drought and heat do snow waters. Job 24. 19 Just as snow is unnatural and would harm crops in summer, so glory is not fitting for a stupid one. PR 26. 1 However, a faithful envoy, one who would fulfill his commission to the satisfaction of those sending him, is likened to a drink that is cooled with snow from the mountains and that brings refreshment on the hot day of harvest. PR 25. 13. Snuffers. Golden implements used in connection with the lamps on the branches of the lampstands in Israel's tabernacle and temple. X 25. 37, 38. 37. 23. New 4. 9. 1 Chi 7. 48, 49. 2 Ch 4. 19-21 The snuffers are designated by the Jil Hebrew word malmiddle.chayim, derived from a root meaning take. Use of the dual form suggests a device possibly having 2 parts. Accordingly, at Isaiah 6. 6 malmiddle.chayim denotes the tongues with which a seraph removed a glowing coal from the altar. A distinction is drawn between the lampstand snuffers and the extinguishers in use at the temple. 1 Chi 7. 49, 50. 2 Ch 4. 21, 22 Though not described in scripture, the snuffers may have been tongues used to hold the burnt lamp wicks, while the extinguishers may have been scissor-like utensils employed to cut off the burnt part of the wicks. At the tabernacle, these trimmings, held by means of the snuffers, were deposited in fire holders, apparently containers for holding such pieces until their disposal. X 37. 23. So. An Egyptian king contemporary with Hoshea, the last king of the 10-tribe kingdom of Israel. When Hoshea conspired with So against Shalmaneser V and stopped paying tribute to Assyria, Hoshea was imprisoned. 2 Chi 17. 3. 4 Attempts to identify So with secularly known Egyptian rulers of this general period such as Ashur-Kanive or Sharbaka are very uncertain, particularly in view of the uncertainty of Egyptian chronology. See chronology. Saburnus. The Greek words any verb and any middle.os adjective basically refer to being free from the influence of intoxicants. However, they are used in the scriptures mainly in a figurative sense. They carry the idea of being sober, moderate in habits, vigilant, watchful, or keeping the senses. A related word, middle.knepho, meaning, primarily, sober up, is used in the Greek Septuagint at Genesis 9. 24. Noah recovered and woke from the wine. Also, the Greek term is used in the same version at Joel 1. 5, where the prophet calls to the spiritual drunkards of Israel to wake up, and at Habakkuk 2. 19, where woe is foretold to the worshippers of idols who say to pieces of wood and stone, awake. In enumerating the qualifications for those who would be appointed as overseers in the Christian congregations, the Apostle Paul states that the overseer should be moderate in habits gr. Nephili middle.os. It would include freedom from overindulgence in wine, as it is also stated that he is not to be a drunken o textoi acute muritra longo. Soko H 984 death. 1 Co 11. 30. In a similar vein he had written previously to the Thessalonians, who has been troubled by persons advocating things not taught by the apostles. He said, concerning Jehovah's Day, that day would come suddenly but it would not overtake true, faithful Christians as it would thieves. Consequently, they should not be sleepy, but be sure they were alert. They should stay awake and keep their senses literally, be sober. 1th 5. 2-6, 8. Paul also warned Timothy of the apostasy to come, with its danger to the integrity of those Christians who wish to remain true. Timothy, especially, as an overseer, had to be on guard to keep his senses, be sober-minded in all things, to suffer evil, do the work of an evangelizer, fully accomplish his ministry. 2-4. 3-5. In keeping his senses, Timothy was to realize that Paul would not be on the scene much longer. 2-4. 6-8. And Timothy himself would eventually pass off the scene, so he must commit the things learned to faithful men, who, in turn, would be adequately qualified to teach others. 2-2. 2. Thus the congregation would be built up as a bulwark against the apostasy to come, being a pillar and support of the truth. 1-3. 15. The Apostle Peter likewise, knowing that he and his fellow apostles would not be on hand much longer. 2p1. 14. Able to act as a restraint to the apostate movement instigated by the devil, counseled Christians to hold fast to their salvation through Christ, keeping their senses completely literally, being sober perfectly, setting their hope upon the undeserved kindness that was to be brought to them at the revelation of Jesus Christ. 1p1. 13. Knowing the seriousness of the times, with growing persecution from the world, they should be sound in mind, watchful, vigilant, and should not neglect serious prayer, to obtain the strength they would need for endurance. 1p4. 7. He warned them to keep their senses, because the devil was like a roaring lion seeking to devour, and they had to take a solid stand against the devil. This required soberness, seriousness, self-control. 1p5. 8, 9. Soko H possibly, branch of a tree. 1. A Judean city in the Shephelah, seemingly referred to as both Soko and Soko. Jos 15. 20, 33, 35. The Philistines collected their armor together at Soko and then camped at nearby Ephes-Dammim before Goliath's encounter with David. 1-17. 1 years later this Soko was apparently among the cities that Hobom strengthened. 2ch11. 5-7. However, this passage may apply to no. 2. Nevertheless, Soko, along with its dependent towns, was captured by the Philistines more than 200 years later, during King Ahaz's rule. 2ch28. 16-18. It is identified with the ruins at Bedabad Horvat Soko, in the low plain of Elah, about 4 kilometers 2.5 meters of Azekah, although Kbutshuwaika, a short distance to the east, seems to preserve the biblical name. 2. Soko, a city in the mountainous region of Judah. Jos 15. 20, 48. It is often identified with the Kbutshuwaika, about 17 kilometers 11 miles of Hebron. This is a different Kbutshuwaika from the one mentioned in number 1. 3. Soko, a place under the administration of one of Solomon's deputies. 1 Kai 4. 7, 10. The suggested identification of it with Kbutshuwaika Duras, about 15 kilometers 9.5 MWNW of Samaria, seems to fit the account, since the proposed sites of both Arabath and Hepher mentioned with Soko in the king's account are nearby. 4. In the genealogy of Judah, Heber is called the father of Soko. 1ch4. 18. Soko could be a personal name of Heber's descendant, or the text could indicate that Heber was the founder of the city of Soko or its population. Assuming that this latter situation was the case, it is not possible to determine whether the reference is to Soko H number 1 or no. 2. Sodi Sotai, from a root meaning intimate group. A Zebulonite whose son no textoi acute muritra longo, soldier 985 following year, Chedorlaomer and his allies defeated Bera, the king of Sodom, and his confederates. Besides seizing possessions and foodstuffs, the victors took Lot and others captive. GE 14. 1-12. Abraham's forces overtook Chedorlaomer and recovered the captives and booty, including Lot and his household. The king of Sodom insisted that Abraham keep the recovered material goods, but Abraham refused, lest bearer should say, "It was I who made Abram rich." GE 14. 13-24. Everlasting destruction. Sodom, however, persisted in a course in defiance of Jehovah, becoming known for such immoral practices as homosexuality. The cry of complaint about Sodom and Gomorrah, Jehovah declared, "Yes, it is loud, and their sin, yes, it is very heavy." God therefore sent his angels to destroy Sodom, with the assurance to Abraham that if 10 righteous persons could be found in the place, the whole city would be spared. GE 18. 16, 20-33. The city showed it deserved destruction, for a vile mob of residents of Sodom, including boys and old men, surrounded Lot's house, attempting to rape his angelic guests. The next day, after Lot, along with his wife and 2 daughters, left the city, Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed by sulfur and fire. GE 19. 1-29. Lu 17. 28, 29. Thereafter Sodom and Gomorrah became a proverbial figure of utter destruction from God Almighty. To 29. 23. Issa 1. 9. 13. 19. Jah 49. 18. 50. 40. Ba 4. 6. Am 4. 11. Zep 2. 9. Row 9. 29. And of extreme wickedness. The 32. 32. Issa 1. 10. 3. 9. Jah 23. 14. S 16. 46-56. See Gomorrah. Concerning a Jewish city that would reject the good news, Jesus said, "It will be more endurable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on Judgment Day than for that city." Mount 10. 15. 11. 23, 24. Of course, Judah 7 says that Sodom and Gomorrah are placed before us as a warning example by undergoing the judicial punishment of everlasting fire. So Jesus' statement evidently was simply making use of hyperbole to emphasize how unlikely it was that people from certain first-century Jewish cities would repent even on Judgment Day. In a spiritual sense, Revelation 11. 3:8 says that the corpses of God's 2 witnesses lay in the broad way of the great city called in a spiritual sense Sodom and Egypt. Isaiah's prophecy 1:8-10 likens Zion or Jerusalem to Sodom and calls her rulers dictators of Sodom. However, about 96 CE, when John was given the revelation vision of events to occur in the future, the typical city of Jerusalem had been destroyed long before. In 70 CE the reference therefore must be to great city or organization, an archetypical Jerusalem, pictured by unfaithful Jerusalem of old. Soldier. A person who serves in an army. In the Hebrew scriptures military personnel are often precisely designated according to the specific function they served. Cavalrymen X 14. 9, runners 1 Sa 22. 17, slingers 2 Chi 3. 25, men handling the lance and shield 2 Ch 25. 5, shooters 2 Ch 35. 23, archers job 16. 13, or bowmen Issa 21. 17. The Greek word for soldier is stramiddle.t-middle.otes. See army. During the time of Roman domination of Judea, soldiers were a common sight there. The fact that an army officer at Capernaum could say, "For I have soldiers under me," indicates that soldiers were stationed there under his command. Mount 8. 5-9 Roman troops were stationed in the Tower of Antonia in Jerusalem, serving as a point of control over the Jews. The military commander there when Paul made his last visit to Jerusalem rescued him from a mob, and again the next day from the rioting Pharisees and Sadducees. Act 21. 30-35. 22. 23, 24. 23. 10. When a plot against Paul's life was revealed, the commander supplied an escort of 70 horsemen, 200 soldiers, and 200 spearmen to take Paul as far as Antipatris, the horsemen going on with him from there to Caesarea. Act 23. 12-33. Jewish soldiers. There were also Jewish soldiers, among them being those who owe textui acute miritra longo. Solomon 986 right with the governor if he heard of the disappearance of Jesus' body. Mount 28. 14. The first Gentile Christian. About 3.5 years later, it was a Roman soldier, a centurion, who sent 2 of his house servants and a devout soldier to invite Peter to Caesarea. At Peter's preaching, Cornelius and his household, doubtless including the devout soldier in his service, received the outpouring of Holy Spirit and became the first members of the Christian congregation taken from among the Gentiles. Act 10. 1, 7, 44-48. Peter's deliverance. The Apostle Peter was later arrested by order of Herod Agrippa I and was imprisoned under 4 shifts of 4 soldiers each. On each shift 2 soldier guards watched the prison door, while 2 personally guarded Peter, who was chained to them, 1 on each side. An angel appeared in the night, releasing Peter from his chains and freeing him from the prison. This created a stir among the soldiers, and Herod, after examining those guards who were responsible, had them led off to punishment, probably to be put to death according to the Roman custom. Act 12. 4-10, 18, 19. Kindness shown to Paul. When the Apostle Paul was taken by ship to Rome, because of his appeal to Caesar, he was placed in the custody of a detachment of soldiers under the command of an army officer named Julius of the band of Augustus. This man treated Paul with kindness and permitted him to go to his friends and enjoy their care. At first he evidently did not accept Paul as having God's guidance, and therefore he gave more heed to the ship's owner and to the pilot. But after a great tempest drove the ship along and tossed it violently for days, when Paul related a vision he had in which the lives of all on the ship were guaranteed, the officer and his men listened to Paul. When the boat began to break up near Malta, the soldiers prepared to kill all the prisoners, but the officer Julius, desiring to bring Paul safely through, restrained them. Act 27. 1, 3, 9-11, 20-26, 30, 31, 39-44. In Rome, Paul was permitted to live in his own hidehouse with a soldier guarding him. Act 28. 16, 30. Symbolic use. In defending his apostleship in his letter to the congregation at Corinth, Paul wrote, "Who is it that ever serves as a soldier at his own expense?" 1 Cor 9. 7. Although Paul had not accepted material help from the Corinthians, he here argued that, as a soldier in the service of his master Christ, he certainly had authority to do so. Paul also considered as soldiers of Christ those who worked in cooperation with him in the preaching of the good news, calling them fellow soldiers. PHP 2. 25. PHM 2. To Timothy, who was charged with a heavy responsibility by Paul, the apostle wrote, "As a fine soldier of Christ Jesus, take your part in suffering evil." No man serving as a soldier involves himself in the commercial businesses of life, in order that he may gain the approval of the one who enrolled him as a soldier. 2T2. 3, 4. A good soldier expects hardships, and he knows the need to be ready to serve at all times and to endure under the most trying conditions. As long as he is in a war, he does not look for comfort in that which pleases him. His time and energy are at the command of his superior. Moreover, a soldier gives up business, farm, trade, or vocation in order to serve. He does not get involved in other things that would take his mind and energy away from the unimportant fight in which he is engaged. Otherwise, it would likely cost him his life, or it would cost the lives of those depending on him. According to historians, Roman soldiers were not allowed to engage in any trade and were forbidden to act as tutors or as curators to an estate so that they would not be diverted from their purpose as soldiers. Even under the Mosaic law, the newly married man, or the man with a house he had not dedicated or a vineyard from which he had not received fruit, owed textui acute miritra longo. Solomon 987. Then the prophet and called his name Jedidiah, for the sake of Jehovah. 2 So 12. 24, 25. Solomon later had 3 full brothers, sons of David and Bathsheba. Shemiah, Shobab, and Nathan. 1 Ch 3. 5. Jehovah's promise to David. Jehovah had declared to David, before Solomon's birth, that a son would be born to him and that his name would be Solomon, and that this one would build a house to his name. The name Jedediah, meaning beloved of Jah, seems to have been given as an indication to David that Jehovah had now blessed his marriage to Bathsheba and that the fruitage thereby produced was approved by him. But it was not the name by which the child was commonly known. Undoubtedly the name Solomon from the root meaning peace applied in connection with the covenant that Jehovah made with David, in which he said that David, being a man who had shed much blood in warfare, would not build the house for Jehovah, as David had it in his heart to do. 1 Ch 22. 6-10. Not that David's warfare was wrong, but Jehovah's typical kingdom was essentially of a peaceful nature and objective. Its wars were to clean out wickedness and those opposing Jehovah's sovereignty, to extend Israel's dominion to the boundaries that God had outlined, and to establish righteousness and peace. These objectives the wars of David accomplished for Israel. Solomon's rule was essentially a reign of peace. Adonijah's attempt to take the throne. After his birth, Solomon next appears in the scriptural record in the time of David's old age. David, doubtless on account of Jehovah's promise, had previously sworn to Bathsheba that Solomon would succeed him on the throne. This was known to the prophet Nathan. 1 Chi 1. 11-13, 17. Whether Solomon's half-brother Adonijah knew of this oath or intent of David is not stated. In any case, Adonijah made an attempt to gain the throne in a manner similar to that employed by Absalom. Perhaps because of the king's feebleness and because Adonijah had the support of Joab the army chief and of Abiathar the priest, he had confidence that he would be successful. It was nonetheless a treasonable action, an effort to seize the throne while David was still alive and without the approval of David or of Jehovah. Also, Adonijah revealed his underhandedness when he arranged for a sacrifice at Enrogel, where he intended to be acclaimed as king, but invited only the king's other sons and men of Judah, the king's servants, leaving out Solomon, Nathan the prophet, Zadok the priest, and the mighty men who had fought closely with David, including Benaiah their leader. This indicates that Adonijah counted Solomon as a rival and an obstacle to his ambitions. 1 Chi 1. 5-10. Solomon enthroned. The prophet Nathan, ever faithful to Jehovah and to David, was on the alert. First sending Bathsheba with instructions to inform the king of the plot, he then came in himself, asking David if this proclaiming of Adonijah as king had been authorized by him. David acted quickly and decisively, calling for Zadok the priest and Nathan to take Solomon to Gihon under the protection of Benaiah and his men. They were to put Solomon on the king's own she-mule, denoting a high honor to the one riding, in this case, that he was successor to the kingship. Compare 6. 8, 9. David's instructions were followed out, and Solomon was anointed and acclaimed as king. 1 Chi 1. 11-40. On hearing the sound of the music at Gihon, not so very far away, and the shouting of the people, "Let King Solomon live," Adonijah and his fellow conspirators fled in fear and confusion. Solomon gave a gleam of the peace that would mark his rulership by refusing to mar his ascension to the throne by taking revenge. Had matters been reversed, Solomon would very likely have lost his life. Adonijah fled to the sanctuary for asylum, so Solomon sent word there and had Adonijah brought before him. Informing Adonijah that he would continue to otex to acute miritra longo, Solomon 988 Adonijah's seditious request. It was not long until Solomon had to act to carry out David's instructions concerning Joab. This was prompted by the action of Adonijah, who still manifested an ambition despite the mercy that Solomon had shown him. Adonijah approached Solomon's mother with the words, "You yourself well know that the kingship was to have become mine, and it was toward me that all Israel had set their face for me to become king. But the kingship turned and came to be my brother's, for it was from Jehovah that it became his." Here Adonijah acknowledged that Jehovah was behind the enthroning of Solomon, yet his request that followed these words was a further crafty bid for usurpation of the kingship. He said to Bathsheba, "Please, say to Solomon the king, that he should give me Abishag the Shunammite as a wife." Adonijah may have felt that he had a strong enough following, together with the support of Joab and Abiathar, that, by taking David's nurse, considered to have been David's concubine, though David had had no relations with her, he could start an uprising that might overthrow Solomon. By custom the wives and concubines of a king could only become those of his legal successor, so the taking of such wives was considered a claim to the throne. Compare 2 Sa 16. 21, 22. When Bathsheba, not disowning Adonijah's duplicity, transmitted his request to Solomon, Solomon interpreted it immediately as a bid for the kingship and forthwith sent Benaiah to put Adonijah to death. 1 Kai 2. 13-25. Abithar deposed. Joab put to death. Then Solomon gave attention to those who had conspired with Adonijah. Abithar was dismissed from the priesthood in fulfillment of Jehovah's word spoken against the house of Eli 1 Sa 2. 30-36, but he was not killed, because he had carried the ark before David and had suffered affliction with him. Zadok replaced Abithar. In the meantime, Joab, having heard of Solomon's action, fled to grab hold of the horns of the altar, but there he was slain by Benaiah at Solomon's order. 1 Kai 2. 26-35. Shimei executed. Solomon also placed Shimei on oath to observe certain restrictions, for this man had called down evil on his father David. When Shimei, about 3 years later, violated this restriction, Solomon had him put to death. Thus David's injunction to Solomon was fully carried out. 1 Kai 2. 36-46. Solomon's wise request. In the early part of Solomon's reign the people were sacrificing on many high places, because there was no house of Jehovah, though the tabernacle was at Gibeon and the Ark of the Covenant was in a tent on Zion. Although Jehovah had said that his name was to be placed upon Jerusalem, he evidently tolerated this practice until the temple should be built. 1 Kai 3. 2, 3 At Gibeon, known as the Great High Place, Solomon offered 1,000 burnt sacrifices. Here Jehovah appeared to him in a dream, saying, "Request what I should give you." Instead of asking for riches, glory, and victory, Solomon requested a wise, understanding, and obedient heart in order to be able to judge Israel. Solomon's humble request so pleased Jehovah that he gave him not only what he had asked for but also riches and glory, so that there will not have happened to be any among the kings like you, all your days. Jehovah, however, added the admonition, "And if you will walk in my ways by keeping my regulations and my commandments, just as David your father walked, I will also lengthen your days." 1 Kai 3. 4-14. Shortly afterward, when two prostitutes presented a difficult problem of parental identity, Solomon demonstrated that God had indeed endowed him with judicial wisdom. This greatly strengthened Solomon's authority in the eyes of the people. 1 Kai 3. 16-28. Building projects. Pictures, Volume 1, pages 748, 750, 751. In the 4th year of his reign, in the 2nd month of the year, the months of April-May, in 1034 BCE, Solomon began to build the Otextoi Acute Miritra Longo. Solomon 989th month, Ethanim, at the time of the Festival of Booths, that the sanctification and inauguration of the temple were carried out by Solomon. 1 Kai 8. 2. 2 ch 7. 8-10. Therefore it must have taken place in the 7th month of 1026 BCE, 11 months after completing the building, rather than a month before the structure was completed in 1027 BCE as some have thought. Another view adopted by some is that the inauguration services were in Solomon's 24th year, 1014 BCE, after he had also built his own house and other government buildings, which occupied 13 more years, or 20 years of building work in all. This view is supported by the Greek Septuagint, which interpolates certain words not found in the Masoretic text, at 1 Kings 8. 1, 3 Kings 8. 1 in LXX, Bagster reading. And it came to pass when Solomon had finished building the house of the Lord and his own house after 20 years, then King Solomon assembled all the elders of Israel in Shorn, to bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, this is Shorn, in the month of Athanan. However, a comparison of the accounts in Kings and Chronicles indicates that this is an incorrect conclusion. The record in 1 Kings chapters 6-8 describes the temple construction and its completion. Next it mentions Solomon's 13-year government building program. And then, after speaking again at length of the temple construction and the bringing in of the things made holy by David his father, The account proceeds to describe the inauguration. This seems to indicate that the description of the government building program 1 Chi 7. 1-8 was inserted parenthetically, as it were, to round out and complete the discussion about the building operations. But the record of 2 Chronicles 5. 1-3 appears to indicate more directly that the inauguration took place as soon as the temple and its furnishings were ready, for it reads, "Finally all the work that Solomon had to do for the house of Jehovah was at its completion, and Solomon began to bring in the things made holy by David his father, and the silver and the gold and all the utensils he put in the treasures of the house of the true God. It was then that Solomon proceeded to congregate the older men of Israel and all the heads of the tribes." After detailing the installation of the Ark of the Covenant in the temple by the priests, who carried it from the city of David up to the Temple Hill, the account then goes on to describe the inauguration. 2 Ch 5. 4-14. Chap 6, 7. Some have questioned the view just mentioned that the inauguration took place in the year after the temple was completed, because of 1 Kings 9. 1-9, which speaks of Jehovah as appearing to Solomon after the house of the king was constructed, saying that he had heard Solomon's prayer. Compare 2 Ch 7. 11-22. It was in his 24th year, after his 20-year building work. Was God 12 years in answering Solomon's prayer given at the inauguration of the temple? No, for at that inauguration, at the close of Solomon's prayer, the fire itself came down from the heavens and proceeded to consume the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and Jehovah's glory itself filled the house. This was a powerful manifestation of Jehovah's hearing of the prayer, and answer by action, and was acknowledged as such by the people. 2 Ch 7. 1-3 God's later appearance to Solomon showed that he had not forgotten that prayer offered 12 years previously, and now he was answering it verbally by assuring Solomon of his response to it. God, at this second appearance, also gave Solomon added admonition to continue faithful as had David his father. Solomon's prayer. In Solomon's prayer at the temple inauguration he referred to Jehovah as the God above all, the God of loving kindness and loyalty, the fulfiller of his promises. Though the temple was a house for Jehovah, Solomon realized that the heavens, yes, the heaven of the heavens, themselves o textoi acute miritra longo. Solomon 990. Solomon later set the divisions of the priests over their services and the Levites in their posts of duty as these has been outlined by David. The temple now became the place where all the Israelites were to gather for their seasonal festivals and their sacrifices to Jehovah. Government buildings. During the 13 years after completing the temple, Solomon built a new royal palace on Mount Moriah, immediately to the east of the temple, so that it was near the temple's outer courtyard, but on lower ground. Near this he built the porch of the throne, the porch of pillars, and the house of the forest of Lebanon. All these buildings were on the descending terrain between the summit of the temple hill and the low spur of the city of David. He also built a house for his Egyptian wife. She was not allowed to dwell in the house of David the king of Israel, for, as Solomon said, the places to which the ark of Jehovah has come are something holy. 1 Chi 7. 1-8. 3. 1. 9. 24. 11. 1. 2 Ch 8. 11. Nationwide building. After completing his governmental building projects, Solomon set out on a nationwide construction program. He used as forced labor the offspring of Canaanites whom Israel had not devoted to destruction in their conquest of Canaan, but he did not reduce any Israelite to this slave status. 1 Chi 9. 20-22. 2 Ch 8. 7-10 He built up and fortified Gezer, which Pharaoh had taken from the Canaanites and presented as a gift to his daughter, Solomon's wife, as well as Upper and Lower Beth-horon, Baalath, and Tamar. He also constructed storage cities, chariot cities, and cities for horsemen. The entire realm, including the territory of the Jordan, benefited from his building works. He further fortified the mount. He closed up the gap of the city of David. 1 Chi 11. 27 This may have reference to his building or extending Jerusalem's wall all around. 1 Chi 3. When he strongly fortified Hazor and Megiddo. Archaeologists have discovered portions of strong walls and fortified gates that they believe to be the remains of Solomon's works in these cities, now in ruins. 1 Chi 9. 15-19. 2 Ch 8. 1-6. His riches and glory. Solomon engaged extensively in trade. His fleet, in cooperation with Hiram's, brought in great quantities of gold from Ophir, as well as algum timbers and precious stones. 1 Chi 9. 26-28. 10. 11. 2 Ch 8. 17, 18. 9. 10, 11 horses and chariots were imported from Egypt, and traders from all over the world of that time brought their goods in abundance. Solomon's annual revenue of gold came to be 666 talents c. $256,643,000, aside from silver and gold and other items brought in by merchants. 1 Chi 10. 14, 15. 2 Ch 9. 13, 14. Additionally, all the kings of the earth brought gifts yearly from their lands. Gold and silver articles, balsam oil, armor, horses, mules, and other riches. 1 Chi 10. 24, 25, 28, 29. 2 Ch 9. 23-28. Even apes and peacocks were imported in ships of Tarshish. 1 Chi 10. 22. 2 Ch 9. 21. Solomon came to have 4,000 stalls of horses and chariots. 1 Chi 10. 26 says 1,400 chariots and 12,000 steeds or, possibly, horsemen. 2 Ch 9. 25. There was no king in all the earth who possessed the riches of Solomon. 1 Chi 10. 23. 2 Ch 9. 22. The approach to his throne exceeded in magnificence anything in other kingdoms. The throne itself was of ivory overlaid with fine gold. It had a round canopy behind it. 6 steps led up to it, with 6 lions on each side, and 2 lions stood beside the throne's armrests. 1 Chi 10. 18-20. 2 Ch 9. 17-19. For his drinking vessels only gold was used. It is specifically stated that there was nothing of silver. It was considered as nothing at all in the days of Solomon. 2 Ch 9. 20. There were harps and stringed instruments in Solomon's house and in the temple that were made from algum timbers such as had never been seen before in Judah. 1 Chi 10. 12. 2 Ch 9. 11. His household food supply. The daily food for Solomon's royal household amounted to 30 otex to a acute muritra longo, Solomon 991 ers, and the regular burnt sacrifices at the temple. There proved to be no more spirit in her, so she exclaimed, "Look! I had not been told the half. You have surpassed in wisdom and prosperity the things heard to which I listened." Then she proceeded to pronounce happy the servants who served such a king. By all this she was led to give praise to Jehovah, to bless Jehovah God, who expressed his love to Israel by appointing Solomon as king to render judicial decision and righteousness. 1 Chi 10. 4-9. 2 Ch 9. 3-8. Then she bestowed upon Solomon the magnificent gift of 120 talents of gold, $46,242,000, and a great number of precious stones and balsam oil in unusually great quantity. Solomon, in turn, gave the queen whatever she asked, apart from his own generous-hearted bounty, possibly more than she had brought to him. 1 Chi 10. 10, 13. 2 Ch 9. 9, 12. Prosperity of his rule. Jehovah blessed Solomon with wisdom, glory, and riches as long as he remained firm for true worship, and the nation of Israel likewise enjoyed God's favor. David had been used to subdue Israel's enemies and to establish the kingdom firmly to its outer boundaries. The account reports. As for Solomon, he proved to be ruler over all the kingdoms from the river Euphrates to the land of the Philistines and to the boundary of Egypt. They were bringing gifts and serving Solomon all the days of his life. 1 Chi 4. 21. During Solomon's reign there was peace, and Judah and Israel were many, like the grains of sand that are by the sea for multitude, eating and drinking and rejoicing. And Judah and Israel continued to dwell in security, everyone under his own vine and under his own fig tree, from Dan to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. 1 Kai 4. 20, 25. Map, Volume 1, p. 748. Solomon's wisdom. And God continued giving Solomon wisdom and understanding in very great measure and a broadness of heart, like the sand that is upon the seashore. And Solomon's wisdom was vaster than the wisdom of all the Orientals, and than all the wisdom of Egypt. Then other men of unusual wisdom are named. Even the Ezrite, apparently a singer of David's time and the writer of Psalm 89, and 3 other wise men of Israel. Solomon was wiser than these. In fact, his fame came to be in all the nations all around. And he could speak 3,000 proverbs, and his songs came to be 1,005. The range of his knowledge covered the plants and animals of earth, and his proverbs, along with his writings in the books of Ecclesiastes and the Song of Solomon, revealed that he had a deep knowledge of human nature. 1 Kai 4. 29-34. From Ecclesiastes we learn that he did much meditation in order to find the delightful words and the writing of correct words of truth. EC 12. 10. He experienced many things, going out among the lowly and the high ones, keenly observant of their life, their work, their hopes and aims, and the vicissitudes of mankind. He exalted the knowledge of God and his Lord, and he emphasized above all things that the fear of Jehovah is the beginning of knowledge and wisdom, and that the whole obligation of man is to fear the true God and keep his commandments. PR 1. 7. 9. 10. EC 12. 13. See Ecclesiastes. His deviation from righteousness. As long as Solomon remained true to the worship of Jehovah, he prospered. Evidently his proverbs were added, and the books of Ecclesiastes and the Song of Solomon, as well as at least one of the Psalms PS 127, were written during his period of faithful service to God. However, Solomon began to disregard God's law. We read, "And King Solomon himself loved many foreign wives along with the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian and Hittite women, from the nations of whom Jehovah had said to the sons of Israel, You must not go in among them, and they themselves should not come in among you. Truly they will incline your heart to follow their gods." It was to o textoi acute miritra longo, Solomon 992, 9. 30. The account does not say that Solomon completely forsook the worship at the temple and the offering of sacrifices there. He apparently attempted to practice a sort of interfaith, in order to please his foreign wives. For this, Jehovah came to be incensed at Solomon, because his heart had inclined away from Jehovah the God of Israel, the one appearing to him twice. Jehovah informed Solomon that, as a consequence, he would rip part of the kingdom away from him, but not in Solomon's day, out of respect for David and for the sake of Jerusalem. But he would do it in the days of Solomon's son, leaving that son with only one tribe besides Judah, which tribe proved to be Benjamin. 1 Kai 11. 9-13. Resistors of Solomon. From that time on, Jehovah began to raise up resistors to Solomon, primarily Jeroboam of the tribe of Ephraim, who finally pulled 10 tribes away from being loyal to the throne in Rehoboam's time, and who established the northern kingdom that came to be called Israel. As a young man, Jeroboam, because of his industriousness, had been placed by Solomon over all the compulsory service of the house of Joseph. Also giving trouble to Solomon were Hadad the Edomite and Rezin, an enemy of David who became king of Syria. 1 Kai 11. 14-40. 12. 12-15. King Solomon's drawing away from God had its bad effect on Solomon's rule. It became oppressive, doubtless due to the drain on the economy, because of the high costs of his government, which must have been increasing to excess. There was also discontent among those he had conscripted for forced labor and, no doubt, also among their Israelite overseers. Having turned away from following God with a complete heart, Solomon would no longer receive Jehovah's blessing and prosperity or the continued wisdom to govern in righteousness and justice and to solve the problems arising. As Solomon himself had stated, "When the righteous become many, the people rejoice. But when anyone wicked bears rule, the people sigh." PR 29. 2. That this situation came about is made clear by the record of what took place shortly after Solomon's death, when Rehoboam ruled. Through the prophet Ahijah, God had sent a message to Jeroboam, telling Jeroboam that God would give him 10 tribes and that if he would keep his statutes, God would build him a lasting house, just as he had done for David. After this, Solomon sought to kill Jeroboam, who fled to Egypt, where a successor of the father of Solomon's Egyptian wife now ruled. Jeroboam remained there until Solomon's death. Then he led the people in a complaint to Jeroboam and finally in rebellion. 1K11 26-40 12 12-20 Though Solomon had inclined his heart away from Jehovah, he lay down with his forefathers, and was buried in the city of David his father. 1K11 43 2Ch9 31 Jesus, a legal heir of Solomon. Matthew traces the descendants of Solomon down to Joseph, the adoptive father of Jesus, thus demonstrating that Jesus had the legal right to the throne of David through the kingly line. Mount 1. 7:16 Luke traces Jesus' lineage to Heli, apparently the father of Mary through Nathan, who was another son of David and Bathsheba and therefore Solomon's forebrother. Luke 3:23-31 Both lines of descent merge in Zerubbabel and Shealtiel and again branch out into two lines of descent. Mount 1. 12:13 Luke 3:27 Mary the mother of Jesus was a descendant through Nathan, and Joseph his adoptive father descended through Solomon, so that Jesus was both a natural and legal descendant of David, with full right to the throne. See genealogy of Jesus Christ. Need to guard the heart. As long as Solomon maintained an obedient heart, with which he was concerned at the beginning, he had Jehovah's favor and he prospered. But his bad outcome demonstrates that knowledge, great ability, or power, riches, and fame are not the most important things, and that to turn away from Jehovah is to forsake wisdom. O textoi acute miritra longo, Psalm 993 Prince of Peace. Issa 9. 6 His name Jedediah, meaning beloved of Jah, harmonizes with God's own statement about his son at the time of Jesus' baptism. This is my son, the beloved, whom I have approved. Mount 3. 17. Psalm 72 is a prayerful expression in behalf of the rule of Solomon. Let the mountains carry peace to the people. In his days the righteous one will sprout, and the abundance of peace until the moon is no more. And he will have subjects from sea to sea, apparently the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. X 23. 31 And from the river Euphrates to the ends of the earth. PS 72. 3-8. On Psalm 72. 7 Until the moon is no more, Cook's commentary says. This passage is important as showing that the idea of a king whose reign should last to the end of time was distinctly present to the psalmist's mind. It determines the messianic character of the whole composition. And on verse 8, he remarks, the kingdom was to be universal, extending to the ends of the earth. The extension of the Israel under David and Solomon was sufficient to suggest the hope, and might be regarded by the psalmist as a pledge of its realization, but taken in connection with the preceding verses this declaration is strictly messianic. The prophet Micah, in a prophecy almost universally accepted as messianic, drew on the circumstance described in Solomon's reign, that Judah and Israel continued to dwell in security, everyone under his own vine and under his own fig tree. All the days of Solomon. 1 Kai 4. 25. Mik 4. 4 Zechariah's prophecy Zech 9. 9, 10 quotes Psalm 72. 8, and Matthew applies Zechariah's prophecy to Jesus Christ. Mount 21. 4, 5. Son. The Hebrew word ben and the Greek word hu-middle-os, both meaning son, are often used in a sense broader than merely to designate one's immediate male offspring. Son may mean adopted son x2. 10. Joe 1. 45, a descendant such as a grandson or great-grandson x1. 7. 2ch 35. 14. J 35. 16. Mount 12. 23, or a son-in-law. Compare 1ch 3. 17 and Luke 3. 27 Shealtiel was evidently the son of Jeconiah and the son-in-law of Neri. Luke 3. 23 Joseph, son of Heli, evidently the son-in-law in this phrase humiddle.os, son, does not appear in the Greek text, but is understood. Men were often identified or distinguished by their father's name or that of a more distant forefather, as David the son of Jesse. 1 Sir 22. 7, 9 The Hebrew and Aramaic words ben and bar, son, were frequently attached as prefixes to the father's name, giving the son a surname, as Bar Jesus meaning son of Jesus. Act 13. 6 Some versions leave the prefix untranslated. Others translate it in most cases. Some give the translation in the margin. Or the prefix may be attached to the name, because of the circumstances surrounding the birth of the child, as Ben-Ami, meaning son of my people, that is, relatives, and not the son of foreigners. Or Benoni, meaning son of my mourning, Benjamin being surnamed by his dying mother Rachel. GE 19. 38. 35. 18. Additionally, the word sons frequently serves a descriptive purpose, as Orientals literally, sons of the East 1 Chi 4. 30. Job 1. 3, FTN. Anointed ones literally, sons of the oil Zek 4. 14, FTN. Members sons of occupational classes, as, sons of the prophets 1 Chi 20. 35 or, a member son of the ointment mixes any 3. 8. Returned exiles sons of the exile as 10. 7, 16, FTN. Good for nothing men, scoundrels sons of Belial 1 Sir 2. 12, FTN. Those who pursue a certain course of conduct, or who manifest a certain characteristic, are designated by such expressions as sons of the Most High, sons of light and sons of day, sons of the kingdom, sons of the wicked one, son of the devil, sons of disobedience. Lu 6. 35. 1th 5. 5. Mount 13. 38. Act 13. 10. F2. 2 So, 2, with the judgment or outcome that corresponds to the characteristic, as, a subject for Gehenna literally, o textoi acute miritra longo, Song 994 1. 5-11 In due time the angel Gabriel announced to Mary, a virgin girl of the tribe of Judah, that she was a highly favored one, adding, You will conceive in your womb and give birth to a son, and you are to call his name Jesus. This one will be great and will be called Son of the Most High. And Jehovah God will give him the throne of David his father. Lu 1. 28, 31, 32. Song. A composition including music and words. A poetic composition. See music. About 1/10 of the entire Bible is song, the foremost examples being the Psalms, the Song of Solomon, and Lamentations. While the scriptures do refer to secular songs, songs of contempt and of seduction, the majority of the Bible's some 300 references to the subject relate to the worship of Jehovah God. In the main, singing is associated with joy, as when the disciple James wrote, Is there anyone in good spirits? Let him sing some songs of praise to God. Just 5. 13 songs expressing sorrow might more properly be termed dirges. 8. 10. Sea dirge. The first song recorded in the Bible was that sung by Moses and the men of Israel, to which Miriam and the women responded, upon their deliverance at the Red Sea. Acts 15. 1-21 Among others are Moses' farewell song, Deborah and Barak's victory song, and David's dirge lamenting the death of Saul and David's dear friend Jonathan. 31. 30. 32. 1-43. JG 5. 1-31. 2 So 1. 17-27 Additional compositions of David include at least 73 of the Psalms. The Bible also refers to the Song of Jehovah, mentioned in connection with Hezekiah's restoration of pure worship, as well as the Song of Moses and the Lamb. 2ch 29. 27. Re 15. 3, 4. References to a new song appear not only in the Psalms, but also in the writings of Isaiah and the Apostle John. PS 33. 3. 40. 3. 96. 1. 98. 1. 144. 9. 149. 1. ISLA 42. 10. Re 5. 9. 14. 3. An examination of the context surrounding most occurrences of the expression new song reveals that such is sung because of a new development in Jehovah's exercise of his universal sovereignty, as joyfully proclaimed in Psalm 96. 10. Jehovah himself has become king. The new developments in Jehovah's extension of his kingship, as well as what these signify for heaven and earth, appear to be the subject of this new song. PS 96. 11-13. 98. 9. ISLA 42. 10, 13. Song of Solomon, a poetic book of the Hebrew scriptures that tells of the unswerving love of a Shulamite girl or country girl from Shunem, or Shulam for a shepherd boy, and King Solomon's unsuccessful attempt to capture her love. The opening words of the Hebrew text designate this poem as the Song of Songs, that is, a superlative song, the most beautiful, the most excellent song. CNWFTN on title. It is but one song and not a collection of songs. At the outset Solomon is identified as the writer. 1. One internal evidence agrees with this, for it reveals the writer to have been one who was well acquainted with God's creation, as was Solomon. 1 Kai 4. 29-33 Repeatedly plants, animals, precious stones, and metals figure in the vivid imagery of the book. 1. 12-14, 17. 2. 1, 3, 7, 9, 12-15. 4. 8, 13, 14. 5. 11-15. 7. 2, 3, 7, 8, 11-13 The writer, as would be expected from a king like Solomon, was very familiar with the land inhabited by the Israelites. The coastal plain. The low plains 2. 1. The mountain ranges of Lebanon, Hermon, and Lebanon, and Carmel 4. 8. 7. 5. The vineyards of Engedi 1. 14. And the pools in Heshbon, by the gate of Bath-rabbim 7. 4. The poem was composed when Solomon had 60 queens and 80 concubines. 6. 8. This points to the earlier part of his 40-year reign 1,037,998 BCE, since Solomon finally came to have 700 wives and 300 concubines. 1 K 11. 3. The expressions of endearment contained in the Song of Solomon may seem very unusual to the Western reader. But it should be remembered that the setting for this song is an Oriental one of about O textoi acute miritra longo, Song of Solomon. The 995 Shulamite tried to protect her from temptation. Therefore, when she wanted to accept her lover's invitation to join him in viewing the beauties of early spring 8-14, they became angry with her and, taking advantage of the seasonal need, appointed her to guard the vineyards against the depredations of the little foxes. 1. 6. 2. 15 Exposed to the sun's rays, the Shulamite lost the fairness of her skin. 1. 5, 6. Later, while on her way to the garden of nut trees, she unintentionally came upon the encampment of King Solomon. 6. 11, 12 Either seen there by the king himself or noticed by someone else and then recommended to him, the Shulamite was brought to Solomon's camp. King Solomon made known his admiration for her, but she felt no attraction for him and voiced a longing for her shepherd lover. 1. 2-4, 7 The daughters of Jerusalem therefore recommended that she leave the camp and find her lover. 1. 8 Solomon, however, was unwilling to let her go and began praising her beauty, promising to fashion circlets of gold and studs of silver for her. 1. 9-11 The Shulamite then informed the king that the object of her love was someone else. 1. 12-14 Thereafter the Shulamite's shepherd lover came to Solomon's camp and voiced his affection for her. She, too, assured him of her love. Quran 1:15. 2. When speaking to the daughters of Jerusalem, the Shulamite compared her lover to a fruit tree among the trees of the forest, and solemnly charged them by what was